I'll share this with you. I was working on my lesson this week and got so excited, and I took a picture of this on my desk and sent it to Karen and said, "Here's my lesson for Sunday." And I think her response in text, but this is how I inferred her tone, was, "Oh, we're not going to cover all of this." And of course, I couldn't write all that on the board and be able to see anything, so that's why you have a handout. I want to change gears. No, before I change gears, I want to backtrack. The last couple of weeks, we did talk a little bit about how God speaks to us through angels. Angels through dreams. And so, got a microphone for me? I wanted Carrie to share.
Hello.
Okay, thank you. Carrie had told me she had a dream story, and I loved it. I thought it was lovely. I wanted y'all to hear it.
I don't know about lovely.
It is.
Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. All righty. Well, first of all, my mother had a dream. My father passed away when he was young, 59, and it was really hard on the church and it was really hard on everybody, especially my mom, sweet mom, Christian, fantastic Christian, just love her to pieces. And so she had a dream a few nights after he passed away, and she said, these are her words, which is really crazy to me, but she said, "Your dad came to me in the middle of the night." I said, "Oh, you had a dream about it?" "No, he came to me and stood by my bed and said, everything's going to be all right." And I mean, for my mother to say that was really, really huge. And yeah, I thought maybe she lost it, but now I've come to believe that really happened to her, or at least it was a dream.
Yeah.
Okay, and then my dream, let's see, about 10 years ago, my sister, who had health problems all her life, was very big and just, had gotten down and lost a lot of weight, but then started having troubles again. And I was very close to my older sister, very close to her. Anyway, so she passed away, and that's a whole different story. But she had been living with my mother and helping her, because my mother was in her 80s by then. And so my sister, was just her caretaker. And she passed away suddenly. And so the same night that she passed away, I stayed with my mom, and I had a dream. And so my sister came to me and said, "I have a teenager body."
That's wonderful.
And I just laughed and laughed and laughed. And so, I wouldn't have even thought to make that up or anything. So
Yeah.
I really believe that some people, either get dreams or something from God, maybe.
Yeah, some reassurance.
So, anyway, it's just two interesting things in our lives.
No, wonderful. Thank you. Jim, take it from you. Thank you. I wanted Carrie to be able to share that because I love both of those stories. All right. So I kind of want to shift gears. We've been talking at length about how we can hear God's message. Is it kind of loud? It's not? Okay. How we can hear God's message and how God speaks to us in our lives. And so now what I want to do is I want to turn and look at, in very practical ways, how does this pan out in our lives as people here on earth? And so this material I got from this book, Calling All Years Good, Christian Vocation Throughout Life Seasons, Kathleen Cahalan and Bonnie J. Miller McLemore, editors of this book. So when they used the term vocation in this book, they did a lot of research. And really back in the early English days, in the early days, vocation really meant calling or purpose. And then somehow it got morphed into work. The term means work. I remember my mother taught vocational education. Well, it was education of how to get a job and work when you got out of school. But for the purpose of this discussion, I'm going to use the term vocation, but I really mean it in the context of purpose or calling. So first of all, I want you to get oriented to the format on the page that you have. So my nice big chart I started with age 0. And it's not on yours. There wasn't enough room. So there's actually childhood and adolescence, 2 stages of life. We're not even going to talk about that. It's very interesting. If young moms of young people, you might want to read it, but hang on. So we're going to start with young adulthood. So you'll see this first row is going to be what are things that illustrate that a person is entering young adulthood or any of these stages in life. So we're going to talk about the entering stage, the entering characteristics of this stage of life. Characteristics of this stage of life. Then we're going to talk about spiritual, cultural, relational experiences. This could be key calling or purpose opportunities. Then we're going to talk about communal dynamics. People in each stage of life, we have things that we give each other in the community. And so these are the gifts that we give to each other. So we're going to talk about that. And then we'll talk about what are the things that signal the transition to the next phase. So this is how we're going to go, like this. And so I want to start with young adulthood. And I'm going to speak to you, Justin, vicariously to Evan, too. I think this is really important. And I want to say a couple of things before I start. I don't remember anyone in my whole life ever, especially when I was young, really asking me, what do you feel like your calling wouldn't have been the word used, but what do you feel like your purpose is? What do you think your spiritual opportunities might be? And then in our context, what do you feel like your callings might be? And so you're not going to see callings in any of this as though God has called me to go into prison ministry. You're not going to see anything like that. This is more, how do we live and encourage each other? This is my purpose of today, is for us to encourage all of us in each of our stages of life to see what God's plan or God's purpose or what his calling is for us. So we're going to start with what's the definition of entering young adulthood, okay? And so this is exploring vocation in the midst of uncertainty. So our young adult stage of life, it's not going to really be certain years. It's going to be really the events that are happening in our lives. So for Justin and Evan, they are emerging adults and trying out adult responsibilities, right? Does that sound right? Trying to figure out what's it like to be an adult? What's it like to bring on have new responsibilities and that sort of thing. And so the characteristics in young adulthood, these are some of them. Exploration of identity as one who participates in the world. So basically participating in the world instead of, little children, you're participating in your family, really. But as a young adult, you have broken free, you've gone to college, potentially you're starting a new job, your life becomes more outside of the home. There's in this young adulthood stage of life, there's an increased sense of responsibility. And I think in this stage of life is when I want to encourage you. The thing is, nobody ever told us that all of these things were happening. We're just living in it, and we just know life's hard. I'm trying to get out of school. I'm trying to get a job, trying to figure out who I am. And I just think this defines it so beautifully. So at this age, young adulthood, you're beginning to think about what is a good life going to be. And that's in terms of what kind of work do I want to do? What kind of relationships do I want to be in? I'm not forcing the thought of marriage on anybody, but when you get this age and your friends around you are getting married, you're starting to go, well, is this going to happen for me? When is this going to happen for me? What is a good life? So I encourage you to think about, what is a good life? What would a good life be to you? In this stage, you're navigating dual callings to relational and economic life. So you're still, you're navigating your relationships you already have and that new relationships you may be building, but then integrating with that with, I've got a full-time job, I have bills I have to pay. So it's kind of dueling callings there. And honestly, right now, you're seeking full-time status in times of economical hardships. For many of us, we bought a house when we were young marrieds, and it wasn't as much money as it is now. For you, thinking about buying a house, yeah. So, with inflation and how much everything costs, you're coming out of college, you're building your adult life where times are hard fiscally. So, and then things are not permanent right now. It's like life is changing. Life is changing really fast for you, is how I would interpret that. So those are the characteristics, I'm going to say, of what Justin and Evan are going through right now. And so what are some other relational experiences that may happen, spiritual or cultural? And some of these may or may not be a key calling opportunity. So reworking relationship to context of origin. That means right now you are thinking about how your parents raised you, thinking about what you were taught as a kid in church, and you're reworking that stuff. You're thinking about it. You're going, all of us did. My parents, I feel like, did really good in this area. I am never going to do that. I am never going to say, if you don't stop crying, I'm going to give you something to cry about. And of course, I said it. But you know what I'm saying. So you're at that stage in life where you're rethinking your faith for yourself. Not only your faith, but just general beliefs about how you view society, how you view culture. And you're negotiating competing narratives on the good life. A Christian may see the good life, a good life, one way. Someone who's very secular may see a good life another way. So there's these competing, and your friends and the people you work with and the media, everything, all the things around us are competing with what we were taught as Christians for what a good life is. You're trying on adult roles. You're looking for your tribe. And you're dealing with failures and obstacles. I remember when my niece graduated from college I think it was like 2008 when the bottom dropped out financially. And here she had gone to school and had student loans, needed to find a job to start paying her student loans and couldn't find a job. So I'm not saying that's that scenario now, but right now, because you're trying on new things, you're going to have obstacles. You're going to have failures. They're not all bad, though. It's not bad. It's all part of the learning experience. Now, this is what Justin and Evan give us. They have increased energy, therefore they bring increased energy into us tired old people. And so this is where you'll see where each stage we're giving, it's a symbiotic relationship. We're giving to each other. So you've got increased energy, you have courage, You're not as cynical as some of us older ones are. And there's a sense of possibility and hope. Those are beautiful things. You give us those things by the things that we hear you talk about. And so the transition from young adulthood, actually, I think it's really funny because Jen was wanting to know which one of these did she fall into. Were you hoping it was young adulthood? Sorry, it's not. But the transition typically from young adulthood to middle adulthood is when you begin to take on roles that are not easily reversed life commitments, like marriage, having children, or a full-time job with major responsibilities. An identity stabilizing commitment, which, we think of marriage as that. So it could be multiple things. It could be buying a house. It could be, making decisions that are not easily changed. That's the signal for moving into middle adulthood. So middle adulthood is going to be Chance, Jen, Tammy, and JJ. Okay? All right. So, all right, good. Oh, we're in agreement? It's a miracle. So middle adulthood is the entering stage is approximately 35-ish to retirement, okay? And this is the joys and paradoxes of vocation, of your responsibility or your calling. You have increased responsibility and hard work, less freedom, the burden, I don't mean burden in a bad way, but the burden / responsibility of dependence, and there's less time for fun, okay? So the characteristics in middle adulthood are opportunities for an enriching life, also carries a loss of independence. So an enriching life, you are potentially your income is increased, you're able to buy a house, you're able to think about doing more things because you might have some, your income may be a little higher, but you have kids, you got a house, you got, responsibilities. And so it's kind of a balancing act between those two. Your life is deeply entwined with others. So with young adults who may not be married and may not have kids, and their parents are younger and may not have health issues, as you middle adulthood folks, you're responsible for your relationship with your spouse, for your children. Your parents may be getting older. Excuse me. Your parents may be getting older, so you're starting to think about how are you going to take care of your parents? What are you going to do about that? It's possible to lose the idealism of young adulthood. I just remember when Courtney started getting older and paying her own bills and all that, very often the term we heard her say, or we said to her, was, being an adult sucks. It's true. But it's wonderful too. And I put work-life balance with question marks behind it because how do we ever find that? When I was working full-time, I never found good work-life balance. And we're still trying to create a good life, not just for ourselves, but for our family, for our kids too, right? So in our spiritual, cultural, relational experiences, we're learning to experience joys and losses. We're getting older, and people that we're close to may begin to die. We may have other losses too. We may lose a job. We, may have any number of things that can happen. So we're starting to really see some swings of joys and losses in our family, or for ourselves. We're trying to live the sacred and the secular. That's a struggle. I think it's a struggle for us probably in all of our stages of life, but especially in that middle adulthood where you are in the thick of your work life, of your career, of raising your kids. And you're having to find your direction in between the secular and the sacred. The elusive search for balance, that goes back to work-life balance, I think. And the power, wisdom, and potential to do good and evil, and all the things that come with that. You're older, you're wiser, you have more abilities, you have more influence on people. And so, how do you use that? You can use it for the good. It can be, especially depending on your work situation, could be used for the not good. Okay? So, the communal dynamics, these are the things, once again, that middle adulthood. Now, for young adulthood, their dynamics are going to be with the youngers, with the ones younger than them, and then with all of us older. For you in middle adulthood, the dynamics are going to be with those younger and then with those of us older. So you're the sandwich generation. I think late adulthood can be too, but you're definitely the sandwich generation. Potentially, y'all have known this, Jim, having Fred have surgery, have your mom have surgery, having to care for your parents and your kids. But in the context of calling, you decide that's your calling. This season of life, my calling is to take care of my kids and to take care of my parents. You've taken care of your mom. That was, Andy, that was your calling for a number of years, was to take care of your mom. Take her to get her nails done, take her to get her hair done, all that stuff. That's a calling. You can find calling through engagement in civic, religious, social service, or social service organizations. This is the phase in life. And this can begin to happen in young adulthood too, where you may find something that you want to be in, a cause that you want to be involved in. This stage in life for me was when I found prison ministry, or when prison ministry found me. So there may be an organization, a social service organization that you want to be a part of to help give to the community. So this is the work-life balance business. You got kids, you got your job, but you want to help the community too. So sometimes it's hard to find that balance, but these are things that we can do. Communal dynamics in this, I think especially in middle adulthood, is when it's important for you to find an exemplar. An exemplar to me is someone older that can be a guide, that can be a listening ear. I wanted to say provide advice. I think we give too much advice. I think we need to learn to listen more and help people find their own answers. But searching for an exemplar, somebody who can be a mentor to you. And then I think in middle adulthood, excuse me, I got to find my definition. Beginning the thought of generativity, which is the desire to positively influence future generations. Yes, you have kids, you definitely want to influence future generations. And so you're really in the thick of it. But it's not just your kids too. It's your kids' friends. It's kids at church. And so this is, I think, when we start to think outside of ourselves even more. It's like, what can I do? Not because in young adulthood, you're trying to figure out who you are, what you're going to do, all the things with that. But now you're at the point, it's like, what do I have that I can offer to the youngers? Okay, so starting to think about that. And then the signals to the transition to the next phase of life would be retirement, empty nest, Starting to think about what's going to fill in the gaps. If I retire, how am I going to spend my time? If I'm working part-time, not working, am I going to keep working full-time? Potentially, a death of a partner could be a trigger to moving into to late adulthood. And at this point, when this transition takes place, I think this is where we begin to, this is part of generativity also. We begin to think less about how can I have a good life and more about what can I do to pass a good life on to others? What can I do to help guide my youngers in what a good life is? So it's like we've been working, building, and then now it's time to start thinking about passing things on, okay? So we're going to move to late adulthood. Young adulthood was exploring vocation in the midst of uncertainty. Middle adulthood, the joys and paradoxes of vocation, calling purpose. And then late adulthood is seeking vocation once again. I would say for myself, and I'm probably the rest of you, I think all the rest of us in here are going to fall into really this category. What am I going to do with this half of my life? You know, the prior half of my life has been all about working, raising my family, becoming financially stable, all of those things. Now, that's about doing. Now, how am I going to be? Is what this stage of life is. So in entering late adulthood, we see losses and gains of life. We begin to lose family members. We begin to gain family members, don't we? New vocational questions and possibilities arise. And by vocational, I'm thinking calling, purpose. I start to think about, okay, what is my purpose now in this part of life that I'm just working part-time and I'm not as busy as I was. I don't have kids at home. And what also happens in this stage of life is we move from a long period of stability, we begin to move into a period of uncertainty. What's going to be next? How's my health? For me right now, the thing that wakes me up at night is taking care of my parents, getting my parents moved here. So we may be in a period of uncertainty. Characteristics in late adulthood is continuation of some middle adulthood activities. We may continue to do some degree of work. We may still be kind of struggling with some work-life balance, but there is some continuation of what we experienced in the prior stage. We begin to feel an indeterminate sense of time. I think at this age, we begin to see our parents get older or our parents pass away, and we start to realize I'm next. How much longer am I going to be here? And we, because maybe we've gotten lost in that work-life balance, now we can start thinking about what is my identity? How can I reestablish intimacy with those closest to me? Because maybe in the past I've been distracted by work. And generativity, how do I pass it? How do I pass on things to the other generations? So for spiritual, cultural, relational experiences or possibly key calling experiences, this is a time period where we really start to think about making meaning of our lives, looking back at our lives. What have I done? What was meaningful? Maybe what did I miss that I want to do so that my life is meaningful? We might have a chance to think more about making a difference in the world, in our families. And because we start to experience more losses, we're trying to make sense of those losses. or our own potential loss of ourselves. And now is a time where we may begin to reconcile with our own shortcomings, things we did that we wish we hadn't, things we wished we just had taken the time to do, been adventurous enough to do, reconciling with others, thinking about people in our family usually is where this is happening, that maybe I need to restore some relationships before it's too late. Reconciling how we think about God, rethinking that and what we think about death. And then I have maybe a new understanding of God. I don't know about y'all. Along with me in this late middlehood stage, I see God so completely differently than I did when I was in my 40s even. And I think that just happens with time. I remember one time Doc said, this a long time ago, Doc said, the older I get, the less sure I am about God and faith, my faith. And he didn't mean losing his faith, but it was really in the context of, oh, when I read that passage now, it means something completely different to me. So here are the communal dynamics. This part's just fun to me because I just think this is us right now, our family. The communal dynamics, the gifts that we give to each other, to the youngers and to the olders, is becoming a grandparent. I mean, I told one of my friends I hadn't seen in a long time that we had a grandbaby. He said, oh, you're in the legacy building of your life. It's like, oh my goodness, I am. It's like, this is legacy time as a grandparent. Another gift we may give to each other is storytelling, especially around family stories. We can be a teacher and a mentor because we have a little bit more time. We have a little bit more wisdom, you know. We may be a caregiver. That could be our calling. Like, as I've mentioned before, we may be a caregiver for our parents. We may have to help in other ways. And so this is where we can become the exemplar. We can be the one for whom our youngers can turn to if they need advice or encouragement. And then the transition out of late adulthood into older adulthood usually occurs when we have a need for changing accommodations. We may not be able to live in our home that we've lived in. We need to think about being closer to our kids. For us, it would be can't get up those stairs anymore. And uncertainty about the present and the future. This just comes from getting older, from our bodies beginning to fail. We start to have to take more pills. And what does that mean? And then often what happens, I think about my dad when I think about this, inability to sustain a middle adult lifestyle, which would just really be the body not being able to do what we used to. Okay, I'm going to go through older adulthood quickly because I have one thing I want to end with. So in older adulthood, entering that stage in life, we go from being caregiver to care receiver. There's a continuation of losses that happen. We lose people around us, we lose our health, our capabilities, and our independence. And we begin to have more limiting factors to our body. And we begin to have a different kind of time, the awareness of the inevitability of death, and then deciding how we want to spend that time. I think the calling of the older adults is they teach us the grace of slowing down. If we will take the time to slow down with them. And they have many gifts they can give us if we will take the time to slow down and be with them and let them pass that on. The communal dynamics, really at this point, I feel like it's us giving to them because they're wondering, who's going to be with me? great-grandparenthood is different from grandparenthood. You're a generation more differed. There's a constancy of loss. My dad has lost all of his friends now. He doesn't have any of his friends left. And the lament that may occur. Who am I? What have I done with my life? Why am I here? And then it's a gift that we, as the other generations, can have, is to give them care. So our older adults, their calling could be receiving God's care through us. And then the transition to the next phase, which would be the phase of eternity, is a calling to bring meaningful closure to one's life. When we come near the end of our life, we are thinking about how meaningful was my life. And I wanted to share this Dying Well relational closure. This is by Ira Byock. And he says there's 5 things we all need to say before we go. We need to say, please forgive me. I forgive you. Thank you. I love you. And goodbye. If we can do those things, that would be dying well, I think. So, that's a lot of information. But there's so many calling stories in the midst of all of this, okay? And so I just encourage us all to be open to hearing God. I want us to share with each other when we hear God calling us in different ways. We can see through all of these stages of life, there's so many ways and spaces and opportunities for calling. And so as a body, as a community, we can encourage each other in that, okay? I did not leave room for discussion, but we do have a prayer. I am not going to give you this prayer yet. Karen wrote this prayer, I think, last week and shared it with Danny and me. And I really felt like it was a really good way for us to end this. And it's going to be a responsive reading, but I'm purposely not giving you the paper with the prayer in it yet because I don't want you to be reading it. I want you to be soaking it in. But I'm going to tell you what the responses are, and I'm going to help you through the responses. So Karen is going to read a line, and I'm going to guide you like Vanna. Okay? Can y'all see over there, JJ, Justin? She's going to read a line. There's going to be 4 separate lines. Each time our response is going to be, but you call me. Then our next response for the next 4 lines are going to be, and I hear you. Next response for the next 4 lines is, you are my God. And then at the very end together, and I'm going to point to each one of these when it's time. At the very end together, we're going to say, your name be glorified in all the earth. Okay, you got that? And then I have hard copies for everybody. I wanted you to have one because I think it's a lovely prayer for us to pray. But I don't know about you. If I had the paper in front of me, I would be reading the paper and not listening to the words. I want the words to soak in for you. But invite you to join in the responsive reading. Okay? All right, you start when you're ready.
Okay. Let me just say, I didn't write this for public
No, she didn't.
use. This was a devotional thing that I wrote. And so Michelle's idea to do a responsive reading is really cool.
I hijacked it.
Yeah.
With
So,
permission. With
permission.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you'll pray with me. Father, I spend my time distracted by trivialities.
But you call me.
I make lists of unimportant things to do.
But you call me.
I look for ways to put off my responsibilities.
But you call me.
I engage my mind with the latest issue.
But you call me.
You patiently whisper my name in the dark.
And I hear you.
You gently remind me of your unfailing love.
And I hear you.
You call me back to your comforting embrace.
And I hear you.
You remind me of your perfect way.
And I hear you.
You are worthy of praise and adoration.
You are my God.
You are mighty and unstoppable.
You are my God.
You are wise beyond all understanding.
You are my God.
You are creator, the source of all good things.
You are my God. And let's read together.
Your
Your name be glorified in all the earth. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, everyone.